Good news you can use when you have a phone, yeah.
She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. So listen up, everybody. Listen up, everybody. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life. Yeah.
Hello again, and welcome to another edition of the Boomer Beat. This is the limited series where we're talking to folks about how different their lives might have been if they knew then what they know now. And joining me today is Terri Lucas-Washington, another Ohio University connection. I've had several on the show, Terri, and you're right in line with everybody else, so welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so take us down your journey from where you started to where you are now and how you got there.
Well, I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and I graduated from Ohio University. While at Ohio University, I just have to preface everything with this because it made a total change in my life. I had got frostbite in one of my toes when I was at Ohio University. And at that point, I decided that I was not going to live where it snowed. Hence, I moved to California.
Really?
Yes. After that incident, I had got so cold that I literally remember calling my mother and crying with my coat on, my boots on, and everything, telling her it has to be a better way to live than this. It just has to be a better way to live. And my sister had lived in California. So this was right before I graduated. So during Thanksgiving time, the following year, during Thanksgiving time, my mother sent me to California to visit my sister. And at that time, I don't know if you remember, when we got out for Thanksgiving, we were done until the beginning of the year.
Right.
And I spent the entire time here. When I left Cleveland, it was probably about 25, 30 degrees. I flew into LAX, sunshine, blue skies, palm trees, 82 degrees. It's like, all righty, this is the way I want to live. And that is how I ended up in California. Now, I graduated with a communications degree, and my goal at that time was to be a programmer in television. You know, the person that sits up and actually makes up the television shows. I wanted to be a programmer. Well, I went on tons and tons and tons and tons of interviews, even when I was in Cleveland and when I got to California, and I just didn't really have any luck. I think at that time period, the industry was more about, which is pretty much still is now, who you know more so than what you know.
Right.
So that was out. But of course, I still had to earn a living. So I, bounced from a few different jobs because I worked with an agency. And I was very, very politically active. So I was working at a voter registration booth, and I met my husband. And this is how I met him. He worked for the Department of Corrections at the time. I mean, he didn't until he retired from Department of Corrections. And we ended up getting married, and I decided that I would give it a try because we were leaving Southern California, going to a brand new spanking prison that the state of California had not opened a new prison in 50 years. And we were activating that prison. So I worked my way up, started in the accounting department, went on the inside to work, decided I wanted to get the inside view. So I was in uniform, but I was only in uniform for a short time. 5 years. And 5 years doesn't really seem like a short time to maybe some people. But when you consider that I worked for Department of Correction 30 years, 5 years is not a very long time. And even then, after that, I would never stay in any kind of position longer than 4 years, because at that point, I felt like In 4 years, I would be able to master anything. Not learn it or know it, but master it. You know, from being a EEO investigator to being a ISU investigator, internal services unit investigator, you know, all while raising children.
Wow.
So even being pregnant with 2 of them while I was working in the prison.
Really?
You know, so it was, yes, you know, it was like walling across, you know, and a lot of people was not, you know, but I would tell them, you know, I'm just pregnant. I'm not sick. Okay. You know, I'm just pregnant. You know, there's always going to be a danger when you work in that environment, regardless.
Yes, I would imagine so.
You know, you have to always know where you are, who you're around, always. I mean, you know, and these are habits and things that you learn that go with your entire life, carry your entire life. I mean, you know, I walk into anywhere now and my first thought is, where's the other exit? I don't want to be in anywhere where there's only one way in and one way out.
Right. I don't think anybody does, but okay.
You know, and you know, it's just a lot of little things that you get safety wise that, you know, working in that type of setting for 30 years will give you. You know, even it even affects the way that you raise your children, you know, because you see so much inside, you know, not nearly as much as, well, way worse than what you would ever see on any television show. I mean, you know, just looking at the type of inmates and the type of things that they've done. And, you know, and because I was in so many different areas of the institution within that 30 years in so many different capacities, I've seen a lot of everything. I mean, it, you know, from an inmate hanging, you know, walking into a unit and seeing a body hanging, you know, just all sorts of, you know, to seeing immediately a fight to where they're all cut up and stabbed. I mean, it's just so much that you see and for me, the biggest thing was to be able to try and learn to separate that, because my children were young. You know, I raised my children while working in a prison.
Wow.
And that, you know, it gives you different type of outlooks and views, because the last thing you want raising Black children is for your children to end up someplace there like that. And it could so easily happen that people are convicted all the time for stuff that they didn't do.
That's true. Well,
you
let
know,
me ask this question.
Not my goal to end up being working in a prison
and having your children there, right?
Having my children there.
I get that.
And
but let me ask you a couple of questions. So, had you not gotten frostbitten, do you think that California would have been still first and foremost on your mind, or would you have not?
No, I don't. I think I probably, at the time period, I was in my senior year, I was engaged. See, that's the whole thing with that. And he wasn't all that agreeable because his mother and everybody was in Cleveland with going to California. Says, well, you're just going out there and I'll come later. But I don't think, had I not got cold that like I did, no, I think I'd stayed there.
I didn't know you were engaged in college.
Gerald Mays. I don't know if you knew him. He was a Kappa.
No way. Okay. Well, no way. I did not know that. Okay. All right. Well, see, now that I learned something new. Okay. So is he the one that got away, or
No, he was the one that I decided once I moved to California, you know, California, West Coast living is all together apples and oranges as opposed to the Midwest in Ohio. I was working in downtown LA. I was young. I had money. I had friends. I was having fun. And I'm not thinking marriage is going to be on my plate.
Gotcha. So now let me ask this next question. Knowing what you experienced in that 30-year period working inside the prison system, if you knew then what you know now, Would you have taken that job?
Yes, I would have, for
Okay.
several reasons. First off, it was a very good career. It provided for my family, and also the fact that my husband, he worked his entire career at the California Department of Corrections, because that's how I ended up getting in from the beginning. And we've been married for 35 years, and we both did the same thing. Yes, I would have. It made for a good career, and even given that, the knowing that there's danger in everything, that sort of environment, I met some of the best people in the world there.
Mm,
The actual staff there themselves were like family. It's not all the time. Even though it's like it's not a you against them, so to speak, because majority of any problems you're going to have is going to be with staff, not necessarily inmates. But it was like a family type environment. I mean, generations of families go through Department of Corrections.
really?
I
As
mean,
employees?
I have a son that's the Department of Corrections now.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
It's
Okay.
almost a
Is that
legacy sort of
is
thing.
that considered nepotism, or is it just what?
There is no sort. They don't. Yes and no. It would be, but the way that they have always done with Department of Corrections, it's always been more of a family thing. And they wanted families, sisters and brothers and husbands and wives and siblings and that sort of thing working together. You have people that are going to be a lot more productive. They're going to be a lot happier. And it just made life, that type of difficult environment, a lot easier.
Okay. I'm not sure about how happy I would be working with my daughter, but maybe I would. I don't know. I'd have to process that. Let me ask you this. Were children planned? And how soon after you got married did you have children?
Yes, children were planned. I had I have two children naturally. I mean, I have total of five, but two are my natural children. I planned my children 3 years after I was married. It's like, okay, I'm ready to have a baby. And I went through, say, okay, so that means it's now time for me to get off birth control and try and have a baby. So I had my son, and my husband had got sick at work. It's really high pressure. He was in uniform. He was a lieutenant at the time. He was watch commander, which means one of those type things is really like off duty, like being a warden of a prison. You absolutely, everything goes through you. You're responsible for the entire institution. And he worked a lot of hours. And I want to say he was probably on his third double, which means it was his third 16-hour day in a row. And his blood pressure went up. And he had a stroke at work.
Oh my.
It was a really big riot there at the prison, and he'd been there for 3 days, and he had a stroke. So he was able to, God is so good, he was able to recover totally. So I didn't have my children as close together as I would have wanted to. So, but I did not want to have an only child per se. I never wanted just an only child. So then I felt comfortable enough to be able to get off of birth control yet again and have my daughter,
Okay.
who actually ends up being the only girl.
And only girl of all okay.
Yes.
All right. Didn't know that either. Okay. Any regrets?
No regrets at all. The only thing, well, I take that back. I think there went through phases, particularly when I was a EEO investigator, and when I was an investigator, that took me away from home too much. I was gone too much because, we had, in our particular region, 12 institutions. So at any given time, the phone, my phone would ring, and they'd say, okay, Terri, we've had a murder. Say we've had a murder at Madeira. So that means I would get up, get dressed, get in my little state vehicle, and drive 3.5 hours away to this prison where everything is taped off so that I can, it took me away from home too much when my kids was young. That's the only thing is that, but a wonderful job. One of the most interesting type jobs I've ever had. Most interesting. But that's the only regret is that my kids was, especially my daughter, with all the boy, with the being nothing but boys in the house.
Yeah.
It was really hard on her.
Anything left that you want to accomplish that you never got around to?
The only thing personally that I want to accomplish, and it wouldn't be in a business, so to speak, or professional wise that way. It would only be personal, and that would be to learn how to play the piano. That's it. I mean, career wise, I did some of everything. See, a prison, you have to understand, a prison is like a little city. It has the makeup of a city. You have your electricians, you have your plant operations, which runs the entire prison. We have our own electrical grids, our own everything, our own food services department, our own everything. It's like living in a city within itself. So within that capacity, you can do so much and work in so many areas. When I retired, I was working in the medical arena, the medical side of the house. I was an administrator, not clinical, but I did supervise clinicians administratively, as far as all of our policies and procedures and, being responsible for, like if somebody dies. I worked at my last prison was at what they call a correctional treatment center, which is like a mini hospital in a prison. All prisons don't have that. And when I retired from working from a level 4 institution, which meant that that's one of the highest levels. Lifers are there, people that don't have anything to lose. They have a lot of segregated housing, like we would have a housing for violent sexual predators. They had their own area in the institution, their own yard, so to speak. And yes, they still have the gun towers and the catwalks with the guns and all of that. And I worked on the medical side of the house that would treat all of those inmates from mental health. We had a big mental health unit, and I overseen 35 staff when I retired in the medical side of the house. So I would not really change any of that because I can't think of any other place I could work that I could work and see some of everything. I've worked from the warehouse to accounting to personnel to everything. I mean, how many places can you go and work and get all those different areas of experience in one building? Not really one building per se, but one place.
That's very true. Very true. All right. So as we get ready to wrap this up, what words of wisdom would you like to share?
One of the biggest things that I would like to share is that to have faith and belief in yourself. Perseverance can get you everything. And be patient. And the world is yours.
The world is yours. Love it. I love it. Woo, Terri. I learned some things about you today that I did not know. And on that note, I really do thank you for taking time out of your schedule to participate in this If I Knew Then What I Know Now series. And to those of you who will be tuning in, thank you so very much. Make sure you leave your comments in the chat section. And remember this, you have gifts to give the world. So find your own unique voice and prosper and stay empowered along your journey. See ya.
Okay,
thanks, Terri.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good news you can use for your life. If you want